All right, everybody, it's Leafs Talk, not live tonight. YouTube meltdown. You know what? This show had plenty of technical difficulties last year, Justin. It was a grind at times, but this one feels kind of nice that it's not our fault for once. You know, it was nobody in the team's fault. So we're not live right now. We're recording the sucker. We asked you to stick around. Sam McKee living the life of luxury tonight, going to the game, sitting in the alumni box with Kipper. Like, can't all be so lucky. Anyway, yeah, this one, dude, I got a few thoughts on it. Can I just say, I didn't think it was as bad as I think some people thought. Where were you at with tonight?
No, I mean, I thought the whole thing was pretty stinky, honestly.
Yeah.
The whole season has felt somewhat like that at times. Like there have been tinges of this, right? Like it hasn't been a full-on comprehensive 3-game start here for the Maple Leafs. Like there are obviously guys who are performing at a very high level right now. I guess you could limit it maybe to Auston Matthews and William Nylander if we're going like ceiling levels here. But there are a lot of issues. There are still things that need to be ironed out here. Goaltending is one of them. Half of the defense core is one of them. The middle six is in complete flux right now. So this team, despite like looking very pretty, being a little polished on the outside, there's some intricacies that still need to be dealt with here.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's weird. I guess the reason why I don't as bad about tonight is that the Leafs had the two best players on the ice in Auston Matthews and William Nylander. Like those two guys to me were pretty dominant throughout the contest. And then the rest of the lineup, I think left quite a bit to be desired. Like all those things that you talked about. Hey, are the Leafs going to be able to defend this year? Well, they didn't look so good in transition at times. They didn't look so good defending the cycle. It looks like they're going to have a problem with big bodies below the dots all year long. Like you saw what the Foligno Perry line was able to do to them. And yeah, pretty much incomplete. How do you want to describe this Blackhawks team? Not exactly very talented, very good. So for them to be able to hang with Toronto with a lot of the players that, we're not 88 and 34, I thought was a little concerning. But I think it was more that than the effort thing tonight. Like I didn't view this as the Leafs didn't get up for this. I think it was like they maybe the six or that bottom six and some of those blue line pairings, like they just didn't look good. They just haven't looked good.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those games, right, where Chicago, and we've seen many teams do this, many lesser teams. I mean, Arizona comes to mind as one in particular. Is like they can kind of shell up a little bit and make it really hard to break down unless you're throwing six aside. And Auston Matthews might it's ridiculous that he didn't score when it was 6-on-5 there.
How many shots did he have tonight?
It just seemed like what's the expected goals? I mean, +1, like above 1, just on that 6-5 condition alone. But teams can shell up, right? And I think Chicago, to a certain extent, shelled up. They scored on the counterattack, which wouldn't be surprising of a team that is, shelling up for a large majority of it. So it wasn't run and gun like I guess it was in most parts of the first two games. I guess they sucked the Wild into a game that the Wild generally don't play. But when you can shell up and only one line or a couple players are really running, that's when it's impenetrable. A team like the Chicago Blackhawks becomes impenetrable. And that's, I think, what we saw tonight. Like a lot of inferior teams can come in and do that sort of thing. And I think we saw parts of that tonight from Chicago.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, Matthews, by the way, 9 shots tonight. A miracle he didn't score. I'll go so far as to say, like, they do bold predictions during the intermissions. I'll say Matthews will never have another game in his life where he gets 9 shots like that and doesn't bury one of them. So maybe just like a little bit of regression. No, dude, I think you're that. And I know it's game 3, but this is a reaction show. If you were to look at this team right now, 3 games in, which will not matter come end of the year, but if you were a Leaf fan that was trying to think about, hey, what is this group going to do differently come playoff time, right? They wanted to add more secondary scoring throughout the lineup. And right now with Domi and we've been really hard on Domi so far throughout his first couple of games, McKee and I, but this is another game where I went, what is it that you say you do here? Like what was the Domi moment tonight? Do you have one? Because at least with Reeves, I see him bumping bodies and doing his thing where he's getting in the mix with guys. I know he's on the ice for another goal where it's a little bit unfortunate, but he is. So the analytics guys are going to hammer him. But I saw Reeves doing Reeves things. I think Bertuzzi has taken too many penalties, but this was the book on him. But at least he's making a lot of positive plays, some good zone entries, some smart plays around the net, some good passes, some good attempts. Like the other guys on this team, Minton and Nyes, again, kind of invisible. And then Domi, invisible. Like I don't see where the other production's coming from if it's not the Stars so far.
Yeah, it's tough to say because it's a great story, Fraser Minton, but I think a lot of the issues are rooted in Fraser Minton to a certain extent because it's kind of just a middle six in flux, right? And I know Domi got his demotion, it was warranted. He got his demotion from carelessness in the offensive zone and throwing passes away. And we were up in the press box the other game, and it's just like a beer league play where he's like blind through the legs into the slot, immediate turnover, goes the other way. That's the type of stuff that Sheldon Keefe wants to get out of all these guys' games. So he's kind of picked up that whipping boy status. But if something was working more in the middle six, other than individuality from William Nylander, and John Tavares looked pretty dangerous in this game as well, you'd have some more set, but there's nothing working on the third line. So it's almost used as your punishment ground, right? And that's where Max Domi ended up. I feel like the one guy who's hurting the most from this, you mentioned, is Matthew Nyes. Like 100%. There is more impact there. 100%. He's showing you a little bit, maybe less in this game than the first two, but there's just nowhere for him to go right now. Like he's trying to latch onto something, and no one can really come along for the ride with him. So I do think a lot of those issues are rooted in the third line center position. Not having a third line center is clearly an issue for this team. And there's only really one other identifiable issue, which is, you probably need another defenseman to knock everyone down a rung. So the weaknesses are pretty obvious. But how do you go about fixing them? And what's the next step if Fraser Minton doesn't go by 9.5 games? I'd be shocked if he did, because he's just not having the impact he needs to have in the middle of the ice in the middle six.
Yeah, the problem is that if you swap out Minton and you put in Pontus Holmberg, like how different are the results going to be? How much have you shored up the need for offense from your bottom six guys? Like the options there are just not pretty. And again, Minton beat out Holmberg in the preseason. Like this wasn't handed to him. This shouldn't be a shock to anybody. And he still beat him out. And I will say, okay, to Minton's credit, this is kind of the pros and the cons. I don't think that he looks as overwhelmed anymore. He does look like he's catching up slowly to the speed of the game, but there are also just some mistakes where he gets opportunities in the offensive end. He does have the boy body at times that you really notice. And the speed at times just, like, did you see him on the penalty kill where he gets walked at the blue line, where it's just they put him out there for some reason and he tries to deny his own entry. He just gets kind of like stepped around. And there are moments where you see him where he just looks completely in over his head. So I'm with you. I don't think that there's going to be 10 games. I hate ragging on him because it's one of those things where you go, he's not supposed to be here. You know, like,
it should be a good story. It should be exclusively a good story, but now we're trending toward it being not as much.
Yeah. So I'll stop doing it because I feel I feel like it's child abuse. I feel like it's child abuse. Like I'm just beating up on this kid.
Okay. So if Fraser Minton is most out of place, who's second most out of place for you right now?
Jake McCabe.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Like, I knew when he came here that he was going to be aggressive, but I thought that really only was going to extend to the hits. I didn't know that he was going to be trying to make so many plays on the offensive end. Like, and the pinching with the top guys out there, sometimes I'm going, what are you doing? Why is Bertuzzi removing himself from the play? Why is Auston Matthews removing himself from the play? Why is Mitch Marner removing himself from the play? Like, there's just so many moments with McCabe right now where I'm scratching my head going, what are you thinking? Like this, there's way too many of those for me right now.
Yeah, I think most people came into the season, looking at that second pairing and being like, okay, well, you're going to have to worry about it, but predominantly you're going to have to worry about Klingberg, because if he has to log defensive minutes, there's going to be an issue. And I'm not saying, Klingberg's, finished product, that you feel great about him logging 18, 19, 20 minutes a night. But if I'm looking at that pairing and looking at the 3 games, it's Jake McCabe who looks like he's doing stuff that's unnatural. Yeah, and that's venturing too far in the offensive zone. That's pinching and trying to land big body hits when you're letting a guy like John Klingberg mop up some odd man rush duty. Like right now, I don't think those two mix very well, but I'm still kind of encouraged from what I've seen from John Klingberg. Maybe that's because he's getting so many offensive opportunities with guys who are going to put the puck in the net. But I'm not as worried about Klingberg fit in the end. And I think we're kind of, if you're looking at, it's always been the right side, right? You always got to add a right shot defense. Now it's got to be a left shot defense, but it's got to be a guy who plays on that left side, either at the top, bumping Morgan Rielly down, which is probably not something you have to do. But again, whatever the pieces fit the best they can, but it's dropping McCabe down, getting him into a third pairing role, and probably getting Mark Giordano, who's maybe third most out of his element right now, maybe out of the lineup, or just playing when needed. It seems like the obvious needs right now for the Maple Leafs are a third line center. It doesn't have to be some guy who's game breaking, but reliable and can make other guys actually, or can lift other guys so that they can do their thing. And then a top four guy on the left side. Like, it's really obvious what they need, and it might be attainable. You look at last year, they added 7-8 guys to the playoff roster. Like, I do think Trevor Living can get these pieces in place, but there's gonna be months where they're playing shorthanded.
Dude, it's weird to think that they would potentially have to do another deadline like that. I think that there are some internal options for the forward group, but they're probably not going to work out. The blue line, I mentioned this before, but it feels like every one of the defenders outside of TJ Brody right now needs some kind of responsible partner to be with them. And that doesn't feel like a good sign early on. Like, Jake McCabe, to me anyways, if he's going to play with Klingberg, he has to know his role a little bit more. And I will say that one of the most exciting game to me was just like that beautiful Klingberg seam pass to McCabe where he did jump up in the rush. And I thought like that was kind of a nice play between the two of them. But yeah, outside of that, I actually would love to see, just like a one-man breakdown of McCabe throughout tonight, especially when he was just like decisions in his own end, decisions in the offensive end. Just felt like he was fighting it and trying to find an identity all night long. And I will say, like, if there's a positive of this, Klingberg totally has exceeded my expectation. I did want to ask you this, like, okay, not like an intangible thing where you would say like Reeves's toughness, right? Or Marner's, awareness or vision, but like actual tangible skill set item. Number one on the team, for example, to me is like Auston Matthews' wrist shot, right? His wrist shot is the number one most special trait of the team. I think that two would almost be like, I know I'm trying to not be vague with these things with like William Nylander's lower body strength, but it's kind of like his ability.
I mean, I was thinking about Nylander, and that's a well put characteristic, honestly, because that's what you're seeing, like more power, like Nathan McKinnon. He's kind of like a bull, right? Like there's more bull in Nylander this year.
There's a moment I wrote down around it's in the second period. If we go back and Jobo maybe puts this thing on the tape, about a little bit midway through, where he's behind the net and he gets hit by two Blackhawks defenders. They come in and they're both seeking like, we're going to try to hit you hard off a puck. And they dislodge him from it because it's a 2-on-1 where they get him behind the net. But both guys are hitting him hard and he just barely moves. Like
Didn't a Blackhawks defenseman lose his stick? Like his stick just like fumbled out of his hands because he bumped
they're just trying to hammer him.
Yeah.
And it's like a comic book character. Like, when there's those scenes in a comic book, like someone tries to punch Superman in the face and he just doesn't even move and the hand kind of quivers after hitting him. Yeah. That's what it looks like sometimes when guys are trying to tee up Nylander for hits. And I know he's always been a lower body freak, a lower body, this is part of who he is, but I don't know, man. I feel like he even hit the weight room a little bit more. I don't know if it's just man body stuff, but like the goal he set up tonight for Tavares, how he's just walking in the zone. Guys can't take the only guy that it kind of reminds me of a little bit is Matt Sundin when he would be behind the net. You couldn't take the puck off him, but that was like his reach and his size and a different NHL. This is just an athletic freak who is completely in the zone right now. I can't get over how great William Nylander looks.
Yeah, he looks awesome. I mean, as dominant as he ever looked. And obviously Auston Matthews, back-to-back hat tricks. He's got the 6 goals. He's got a lot of the moments, but a lot of those moments where, I don't know, 6-on-5 and he's putting pucks in the net, right? And I think the wow moments for the Maple Leafs to start the year have almost exclusively belonged to William Nylander. Like
100%.
The goal he scored, well, he scored 2, but a couple goals, or one of the goals he scored, I believe it was the second one on Saturday night. It just like, there was almost a silence among the crowd because it was like, oh my God, lot. Like
Holy
William
shit.
Nylander is absolutely in control and doing things at a level he wasn't last season. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Contract year, you put a little extra effort into your off season. You talked the talk, saying it was going to be your best year and you're going to redefine how much you're going to make. And now it's just pay him, right? It's just like this guy. I understand it can be a little bit fleeting and it won't be like this forever. And will the summers always look like that for William Nylander? But imagine losing this guy right now. He looks like one
And
of the best offensive weapons in the NHL. And for that reason, it's just, hey, what do you need, Willie, to make you happy? Because there's no way I want to see a team with the Maple Leafs right now that does not include William Nylander.
well, it's not going to be a big secret, but the Chicago Blackhawks are going to have over $50 million in cap space this offseason. And so the team they just faced, it tonight would have felt a lot different if he would have been on the other side playing with Connor Bedard. Okay, so that's the last big topic for me because, yeah, I have 34 and 88 great, Pad McCabe, lack of depth as my top 3 topics. But now let's move into, I've got to watch him now a couple of different times, but this was I watched the entire Pittsburgh game because that was a standalone. I didn't get to watch all of the Habs game, obviously, but yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about Bedard almost because he's clearly special. Like what are you supposed to say? There's an energy when he has the puck on his stick. There's the play he makes in the first period. He ends up with 4 shots on goal. I feel like Taylor Hall actually looked him off a couple of times where maybe he would have had a goal tonight. Like he puts himself in good position. He makes these just beautiful plays in tight where like defenders are draped on him and he's tiny. And these are men who are in the NHL. And he's, again, a 19-year-old who just stepped into the league and it's hard to get the puck off him. I just like he's just basically delivered on every single promise that I thought he was going to so far, even though he wasn't on the goals. He didn't score a goal tonight.
Yeah, you see it most on the rush, I suppose, because
Yep.
he's not having to actually deal with bodies. But on the rush, he looks like he's making the correct decision or the correct read or the correct play to give himself the maximum amount of time and space and opportunity, 99% of the time. And I know we haven't seen 100 odd man rushes yet for Connor Bedard, but it looks like he's got such mastery of odd man scenarios. And I was thinking about it before a game, like, can he dominate like Connor McDavid? It's going to be tough because you're not as big as Connor McDavid. Can he dominate like Auston Matthews or score like Auston Matthews? Again, it's like, it's probably going to be tough because you're not as big as Auston Matthews. But I'm not going to like say no anymore, right? Like, I think he's just going to define himself as the superstar, generational probably that he is. And I was trying to come up with a comparison because Marner doesn't feel right, and it can't be Matthews or McDavid based on the size and what they can do out there.
Yeah.
Is it Nikita Kucherov? Is it the closest guy that he reminds you of?
Yeah,
Nikita
except for
Kucherov
if Nikita
without
Kucherov
like that.
took the game seriously all the time. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like
It
if he
feels
had a
like
conscience.
he could be that.
Yeah. If you put a conscience inside of Nikita Kucherov's brain, that's what you would kind of get is
if it wasn't just probably, April and May.
Yeah, that's probably the closest comp. Man, no, even in the playoff months, Kucherov makes some plays where you're like, this guy is really one of the best, huh? Like this guy's got Stanley Cup rings and was one of the main reasons they end up getting him. Yeah, I think he's terrific. And you're right. Like one of my favorite things to see, like what I think is part of what makes McDavid so special is that off the rush calmness that he has, where he's going faster than the other guy on the ice. But then with the puck on his stick, he's able to make it seem like that part of it is in slow motion. And Bedard has that. Like Bedard has that, what I only really see consistently with McDavid, which is the play you saw in the first one where you're like, oh my God, he's going so fast. He's probably not going to be able to. Oh no, he did. He made the move exactly that he wanted to make. And he did it in a kind of a calm closing fashion. And so I'm just excited to see the entire career of that. And I love that the NHL has another one of those guys.
It's almost as though he's controlling the defenseman that he's skating in on with the puck, right? It's almost like he's placing them where he wants to go. And honestly, you nailed it there. I think only Connor McDavid does that around the league. And I think we're seeing signs of it already from Connor Bedard. And I think that would be a main difference between a guy like Nikita Kucherov and him. Like Kucherov's got that finishing ability that Bedard clearly has. I don't think he can do that though. And that's why I think a guy like Bedard, I do think the ceiling would be more than that. We're talking about a Nikita Kucherov who once had the highest scoring season in the salary cap era before McDavid went and changed all that. So yeah, I mean, the ceiling is unbelievably high for this guy. And it's been a pretty tremendous start.
Yeah, they got to be encouraged too with all that cap space moving forward, where it's like, hey, the team probably isn't going to be very good this year. Like they're just not. They don't have a lot. I thought it was actually kind of a nice game from their blue line, but yeah, their forward group they don't have too much there. Obviously, in net.
Yeah, it's Leaf like. So I was going to say in that, yeah, they tanked, but they did it right, and they were rewarded for doing it right. Like it wasn't sloppy. It was a pretty methodical teardown, and it just happened to be a pot of gold at the end of it.
I like, though, that their number one tank move can be attributed to trading for the goaltender that Kyle Dubas gave a 3-year contract to during a cup run.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good reminder. It's a good reminder.
That's a toughie. Yeah. That's a toughie. Okay, so those are the big ones for me. Any other big topic for you, or time to move into rapid fire?
Let's go to rapid fire.
Yeah, okay. Number one, I think it's just, again, it's another game for the Ryan Reaves debate, which is what exactly is he bringing? Because he's yapping with Corey Perry. Then Corey Perry ends up scoring a goal where he gets in behind the defense and Barry's one. He actually had some dangerous plays. I'm not going to say like Reaves caused that to happen, but yeah, I thought that line, the Perry and Foligno line, was pretty engaged throughout the game, and they definitely got the upper hand. But when I did watch Reaves, it was like he made some hits. He had a great first shift. I don't know. It's a hard part to remember in this game, but he actually caused a turnover and created a shot on net. And I went, whoa, stick that in your expected goals for. And then the rest of the game, not as much. But yeah, just the havoc, the trash talk, everything, being on the ice for a goal against. Just kind of the perfect Reaves night again. We're 3 for 3 on the debate.
Yeah. I mean, tale as old as time, excuse me, of Corey Perry just like winning that part of the matchup, winning at the margins, dominating whoever it is, whether it's a guy like Ryan Reaves or a guy like David Camp. Like it just doesn't matter. Corey Perry's going to have that edge. Again, like you could just talk yourself in circles about this, right? Like clearly they see some value in that room beyond what Brad Treliving said. They see some value in the room. Auston Matthews going first to him and in some post-game stuff. Clearly it gives you some life. Clearly it gives the building some life when he lays 2 massive hits and fights a guy. But when a guy like Corey Perry, who is a veteran, who understands these situations, thrives in the mud, if you want to call it the mud, like ultimately it will come down to who can play a little bit better. And Corey Perry at this stage, getting a breakaway opportunity and being the worm, is going to provide that edge and be better at the margins where Ryan Reaves is trying to make his impact. So on a night where it's Corey Perry, it's unexpectedly going the way of the Chicago Blackhawks. But I do think it's been in large part a pretty positive start for Ryan Reaves. And I saw what a lot of people saw, the other half of the equation saw against the Minnesota Wild team, where he did have a positive impact and he remains revered by his teammates. And again, I don't know how connected these things are, but Auston Matthews looked more physical tonight than he did on an average night last season.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I've enjoyed the Reaves experience so far. I will say, they couldn't have gotten a Corey Perry signing done this time around because Chicago threw too much money at him. But I couldn't help but feel like, it's just been multiple years of them missing out on this guy who would be so perfect for their bottom 6. Like year over year over year, it's someone else. It's a different veteran with that different complexion. And you go, like I get it. The Joe Thornton thing and whatever, just different vets come through here. And I go, but it almost feels like it should have been Corey Perry all along. He's the one that got away from me with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Chicago better do its part and deal with the deadline. Like we can't have a playoffs without Corey Perry. I don't care where he ends up, but
it's still a decent chunk of change. Like
still $2 million.
Yeah. It's like, it's going to be real money. Noah Gregor, I like him, but no more fighting. I know he answered the bell, but
it was Arbor Jacques I like, right? Like get down to the knees as fast as you can. A quick turn down to the knees. He took a couple while he was on his knees, but I mean, I guess he can play a little bit bigger with Ryan Reaves, but it was more, the face plant from Zaitsev.
Yeah. I just think that if you remind me of Dylan Dennis, then not good. So no more of those. What do you think of Joe Woll? Sorry, Woll.
Yeah, a little. I guess we got a little late addition to the pronunciation guide.
This though, because I'm gonna screw it up for the rest of my life, and people are gonna do it, and I'm gonna say Woll, and it's like, I just Just do it at the beginning, man. Please.
I was told it rhymes with rock and roll, and that makes it all that more difficult. So I'm not even. Again, let's just talk about the backup goaltender for the Leafs.
Just say
I know
full.
it's impossible to say that.
It rhymes with rock.
It's impossible to say it if you think about it that way. So now it's just it completely in the head. I don't feel any differently. Like, I don't feel any differently about the Maple Leafs goaltending situation. I don't think by what we saw, it looks like a guy that's ready to steal a starter's job. I think we could maybe get to that point if he strings a couple of good games together. But I think the consensus and how I felt coming in was, yeah, they got a pretty good backup goaltender, and he looked like a pretty good backup goaltender at times who didn't make the big saves that I guess an elite goaltender could have in the opportunities that he got. I mean, it looked like a backup goaltender that gave its team its chance to win, and they just didn't score for him.
Yeah, I've really nothing else to add on that. He faced 30 shots against a Blackhawks team where I think if this is last year's Leafs team, that Chicago doesn't get 30 shots. This is this year's Leafs team. You might kind of have to live with that. And I said after last show, it's heart attack hockey at times with these guys, especially the way that the defensemen are playing. And I just don't expect that to not continue. It's like, you're going to play this way with those goaltenders, you're going to have to live with these kind of results. Overall, I just thought he was good. Like, you're right. I didn't think he was great. I didn't think that he let in a real stinker. He was solid. I liked some of the saves, especially early on in the game. But yeah, nothing overly spectacular that stood out to me where I was like, holy crap, this is just like an amazing thing for him.
More worried about Samsonov than I am Wall, but not clamoring for Wall to take his job, right? Like that's just the reality.
Yeah, you have to be. I don't think there's any question there. Another goal song.
Oh man, they have really fumbled this, have they not?
How did they do so poorly? This is unbelievable. Like 3 games and 3 goal songs, and you thought this was gonna be all right. Like, and I know that probably most people didn't even notice it on television because you just accepted that it was the Kid Cudi song, and we were all waiting for the first time, and now you just didn't expect it. And then all of a sudden it was Doop Doop, and now it's Panama. And I like Panama, the song. Something doesn't fit with me though for the goal song of the team. And I just, this is just a weird, this is an unnecessarily weird situation that Toronto has put themselves in. Like, you had a song that needed to change, just pick a song and stick with the other song like every other team has done forever. Like, it's just, I don't get it. I do not know how they got here, really, other than just too many middlemen, too many cooks in the kitchen. Like, I don't know what else to attribute this to.
I mean, we've reached saga territory, like officially, and it's just every time they do something to address the issue, they make a mistake. It seems like not doing it earlier was a mistake because everybody wanted it to change. The players included. The players are the most important thing. Do it. Then they make a change. I don't know if they went into focus groups, but they found a song that they thought was appropriate, and then they realized the lyrics, you can't do it because there's complaints, and they want to be squeaky clean because that's who the Maple Leafs are. So they change it, and now I think they're in the cycle where they have to do like 41 songs. They because they're just like they're good. They got to do 41 songs now. We got to do a different one every time because now it's like, oh, we're just testing them and waiting for people to not hate it, which is the worst thing that they could do. Like, this is a complete mess, and it's all self-imposed. It's a disaster.
Dude, this is one of my least favorite things about corporate culture is that the second someone complains about anything, it's just like, oh my God, we don't want to have any risk. Like, screw it, scrap it. The Kid Cudi song, I have heard a billion times. Like you and I are both, you're an 80s baby or early 90s?
80s. Like, this was prime university.
Yeah,
like, you've probably sung it a million times.
That's what I'm saying is I've heard this song a million times. I've never thought of like the connotation, and I even read the lyrics after, and I was like, seriously, this is what we're doing here. I'm
not surprised with the Leafs though.
I know,
surprised at all. I'm surprised it got through because that's how attentive they are to these things.
Just the idea that, like, first of all, whoever complained, you gotta evaluate what's going on in your life. Like, you gotta give yourself like 10 minutes alone and go, what am I doing? You know,
why?
What am I, what am I doing here? And the Leafs for actually acquiescing to this complainer and these people that had nothing better to do than be faux outraged. Like, it's just painful. It's truly painful. Anyway, I never thought that we were going to have I thought we were going to do one Leafs talk with the goal song, and that was going to be it. And so far, we're 3 for 3. So we'll see.
It's 41. We're getting 41.
We'll see you next time. Justin, thank you so much for making time tonight, filling in.
It's a
for
pleasure.
Sam, just luxury box. Sammy, luxury box McKee, his third game.
I didn't know the reason. I thought it was a sickness. I thought he came down with something. I see him on Kipper and Bourne. I'm like, what's happening? But I didn't know.
He came down with
the
I'm close to Nick Kiprios flu.
Yes.
Like, that's a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
So
it's the best flu.
I will say that the technical difficulties that befell us tonight felt a little bit like the Sam McKee curse. I'm not saying it was 100% that,
Yeah.
but I'm saying it cannot be ruled out. Like it.
No, it can't.
It just can't. Let's hear you on, again, subscribe to Fan Pregame, where you can hear Cuthbert and Ailish now every single day on the Fan, and national television is a nice touch.
Yeah, I got to get haircuts weekly. It's a complete new life change. It's a challenge.
It's tough to be you now. Makeup, you doing the makeup?
No makeup. No. Kipper's leaving it on the table though, and it's like it's very. I might have to start because Kipper does it. Maybe that gets me to the box.
Yeah, but you don't want to touch Kipper's makeup because he's very particular about it, and he gets obviously the good stuff, and it's very dependent on like your skin tone. So just you're a bit of a darker complexion than Kipper. You want to be careful with that stuff. Yeah. All right, subscribe to this podcast, leave 5 stars, share it, do all those things. Hit the thumbs up on YouTube when this thing's posted. And then, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Justin Cuthbert and JD Bunkus. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We will see you after the next game.